You're listening to Owning the Buy Box, an IP Secure podcast. This is the podcast for agencies, brands, and aggregators who want to master Amazon, push out unauthorized competition, and take their business to the next level. You're about to hear a conversation that'll help you maximize your growth on Amazon by owning the Buy Box. Let's get into the show.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Owning the Buy Box. Today we've got a very exciting topic, a great guest. I'm your host, Dave Cooper. I'm also the founder and CEO of IP Secure. And on Owning the Buy Box, we focus on the importance of brand protection and the importance of it really in the e-commerce space. It's a critical function if you're going to be successful online. And our guest today has excellent, rich experience in the space. And Oliver, forgive me if I butcher your name, Olivier de Combret.
That's perfect. Almost perfect. Almost perfect.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's I think it's always like tricky with people's names. I want to get them right. So I appreciate that. But Oliver is someone who has very unique experiences. He's currently the head of IP for SellerX, which is one of the largest, most exciting aggregators today in the space based out of Berlin. But his experiences have led him here, Oliver, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that. And we really appreciate you being with us. And I know as head of IP for SellerX in an e-commerce environment, there are unique challenges and various topics that are pretty critical, right, for IP and for brand protection. But you got your start in this space, really in the luxury arena. I know you spent about 7 years at Chanel. How did you wind up in the IP space and actually in luxury in particular? I'm just curious how you got there.
First of all, thank you very much for having me in the show. I think it is a great opportunity to speak about what we do at SellerX, and I'm super happy to share my experience. So as you said, I spent a few years first in the luxury arenas, as you said, and it's it's actually a super great school. So as you could probably hear from my accent, I'm French, and when we start as a young IP lawyer in France, a lot of the job is actually in the luxury companies, because as you probably have noticed, most of them are French based. So it's actually a super great school because in terms of IP, obviously these companies have some challenges, as you may have noticed. And so myself, yes, I've focused a lot on trademarks, and I did a lot of brand protection and trying to protect the brand specifically online. So this was my main focus on these companies.
And that makes sense that, new lawyers, right, in that part of Europe would gravitate towards luxury brands because IP and brand is so important to them. There's probably good opportunity in that space, I would think, throughout Europe. So it's interesting because you went from, a company that obviously believes that brand is critical for success. And it, of course, Chanel is an amazing, iconic global brand. But they also are probably less reliant on e-commerce, at least marketplaces for sure, right? Like Amazon. I know that Chanel's direct-to-consumer operation, I'm sure, is very successful. I know because my wife is a rabid fan, and I've spent probably more time than I should on the website trying to buy products that I can't afford. But it's sort of interesting to me, right? Because that's an environment where, Amazon is probably less critical to the revenue of the business. And then you move to a company where, a platform like Amazon is absolutely critical, right, to the success. So What was that transition like for you? Was that difficult or different? I would imagine.
It is very different. I won't lie, it is very different. So still, when we work in luxury companies, as you mentioned, most of them do not sell too much online, and they have different type of sell channels, in which is very different from SellerX, where we sell a very vast majority of our products online and specifically on Amazon. But still, these luxury brands have a massive problem of counterfeit online and also on Amazon. So this is something I've been working on for the past few years. So I knew already how Amazon was working. I also knew the type of issue we are facing on Amazon and the type of challenges. So it was not completely out of the box discovery for me. But still, as you mentioned, this is a different type of challenges as well, because when you work in a luxury company, the brand itself is critical, like the value of the brand and the beauty and what people think about the brand. When we work on Amazon sellers, the brand are less critical. Usually, people don't know as much the brand names, but still the IP is absolutely critical, because this is how it works on Amazon. I'm sure we will discuss more about it, but like without brands, we can't use a brand registry and all of the benefit that Amazon platforms is offering.
Yeah, it's interesting. It becomes, I think, rather defensive, right? When you're in the luxury space, you look at these platforms, Amazon and many others, to your point, and you don't really see opportunity. You see risk.
I think this is what they have been created. Like most of these luxury brands have been created like over 100 years ago, and they have in such a long time they have created something amazing, and they are beautiful, and this is what they make it so powerful and dreamed about still today. And this is what they created a little bit of an IP fortress. And now when we are working in the legal department and IP department in these kind of companies, we are trying to defend this fortress that have been built for the last decades or centuries for some of the brands. When it comes to Amazon born companies like we mostly have at SellerX, it's very new companies, so the visibility is not the same. The people don't know it as much, so it's a little bit of a different approach.
And they're usually lower cost products, right? Not luxury items. I mean, that's the interesting thing. It's like when I go to Amazon and I'm searching for something, if I happen to fall upon, a luxury handbag or something, you're almost shocked, because you don't expect to see that on Amazon. And I guess, they do slip through, right? Like every other marketplace, there's just an element of people that will put this content up. And I'm more educated, so I guess it's probably not a fair comparison to the average consumer. But yeah, it's really interesting. I love your analogy about the fortress. I think that's really good, because at SellerX, it's really more about being, I think, on the offense, right, rather than the defense.
We have to create the brand awareness. We are starting, and we have, hopefully one day we will be as famous as Chanel or any of the big brands out there. But as you said, we are at the beginning, so we have to create it, and IP is a critical step towards this fortress.
I also think Amazon does go out of their way to probably help luxury brands and help iconic, if you're an iconic global brand, and this is not a negative criticism of Amazon by any means, but I think it's much more visible publicly to consumers and to other people, versus someone who has, a bicycle to sell, right? A commoditized product potentially. So I do think Amazon is a little bit more proactive when they're dealing with, iconic brands, right? Versus brands that perhaps are not, not household names and not, not luxury items.
Yeah, we do face challenges with smaller brands, and indeed, but we have a good relation with Amazon, and we still have ways to deal with it.
I'm curious too. So now that I think you've been with SellerX about a year, and SellerX has been in the news a lot. You guys are very very public. People are, I think, very aware of SellerX because you're really a market leader in the aggregator space, which is a space that really I find super interesting. Um, and it makes a lot of sense when you think about the aggregator business model. It perhaps has proven to be slightly more challenging. I think everything's challenging now, more so than it was a year ago, right? With the economy and everything else that we've been through. But for aggregators, I would think, and I'd love to hear your perspective, unique concerns, right? When it involves the brand and IP, um, what are some of those things you think that are unique to aggregators when you're looking at a brand or intellectual property portfolio?
Do you mean when we acquire a new brand into our portfolio?
Yeah, like for instance, I would think that you're even before you acquire the brand, right? You're probably evaluating their intellectual property and their brand and their trademarks and what are some of those things that you look at and how important is that for you as an acquirer of brands on Amazon?
Yeah, indeed, it is critical. So very very important for us to look at the IP. So whenever we have a new potential acquisition, so we enter into a discussion with some people that are willing to sell their business to SellerX, we will run what we call a due diligence. This is something that on a few weeks, different people in the company will look at different part of the business to assess how strong is the business is and what would be the how much valuable would be the business and if it could be a good match with entering into SellerX portfolio. And in my scope in IP, I look at how much protected is this company and how much are the possibility to extend in terms of geographical scope, for instance. So if we want to launch new product, because obviously if there is a poor trademark protection and some competitors are using a very similar trademark in other market, that could be a flag for us. For instance, if you're a US business and you have only registered your trademark in the US and then you have one of your competitor or not even a competitor that is using the same trademark or a very similar trademark in Germany, then it could potentially block any expansion into the EU market. And this is something that we want to know before buying because it will change, obviously, the valuation of the company.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it again, like, you're now looking and evaluating IP through the lens of growth, right? The desired goal is growth.
It can be growth, but it can also be like if I'm looking at any potential dispute, because if a company, if you are having a business in the US and you are already facing a dispute in the US with one of your competitor, I'd like to know it before I acquire your business, because it is potentially a big block. If in 3 months or 3 years after I acquire your business, your business is completely blocked to do anything, it's not even about growth. It would be like the collapse of the entire business. So this is something we of course want to know before if we want to take the risk or not.
It's really incredible how, and I work during my day job, with a lot of brand owners, small ones, medium-sized brand owners, and a lot of them just don't understand the importance of this until they get to a point, right, where someone like yourself points out for them how important it is to think strategically, long term, and globally, right, about protecting your brand. I ran into someone recently who runs a company that makes cell phone cases, and this individual is a small company, but they're growing super fast on Amazon. And I think because his cell phone case was used like on a reality TV show or something, he got some free press on his product. And all of a sudden, his sales went from 5 million a year to 5 million a month on Amazon. And very quickly, counterfeiters from Asia moved in. Again, selling on Amazon.com, but these guys are all based overseas. and he came to me for advice on what he should do. And one of the things that he said, which really caught my attention, was, we only own this trademark in the United States.
That is too often the case, as you mentioned, and this is something. And I understand when you're a small business owner, when you start with a couple of thousand of bucks, and then you don't want to spend too much money into IP, because obviously registering trademarks, registering design or patents can be quite expensive, especially at first. But in this case, like whenever the business starts to boom, and if you are on TV, if you are on TikTok, for instance, it happens quite regularly nowadays. Like one person speak about you on TikTok, and the day after your sales go like crazy. But the thing as well, there will be like application from anyone in the world, like I call it a pirate application. And if you did not register into EU or UK or like the main market and China, of course, then people will register there, and then you are blocked if you want to ever launch into this business. So a lot of sellers, they say, yeah, but I'm only in the US. I'm only wanting to sell in the US, which is understandable. But then the possibility, even if in 2 years you decide, oh, maybe I want to start selling in the UK, if you did not prepare a little bit in advance, then it might be much more complicated for you. So and it will be much more also costly. So at first, when we are speaking about a few thousand euro to have a broad trademark protection, for instance, this is something that you pay every 10 years most of the time. And this is something that will save you so much cost, because whenever you have, and I'm sure, Dave, you're aware, but whenever you have to buy a trademark, or you have to fight in court for a trademark in China, in Japan, or in Germany, it will cost much more than these few hundreds euro that you would have spent at the beginning.
And I feel like some of these jurisdictions are even known as places where, I mean, China in particular, right, is a place where we know that third parties will aggressively pursue your mark in that jurisdiction based on the success they see you having somewhere else. So it's not as if this is a problem that is accidental. This is, in some cases, very targeted and premeditated and specific, which is kind of scary if you think about it.
Yeah, this is something we also facing quite regularly, and I'm talking to a lot of these Amazon sellers, even the one we do not acquire, but a lot of people ask me my advice, and we see too often, for instance, they let the IP registered by their supplier. So we know that a lot of brands are actually having their supplier based in Asia, in China for most of the cases, and they would say, okay, I'm not selling in China, I don't need a trademark in China, so I will let my supplier register in China. But when you do it, it means that you will be blocked with this supplier, and they will, whenever you will have to discuss about changing the term of your supplier contract agreement, then it will be much more complex for you, because obviously they will have the bargain power to say you can't produce with another supplier because I own the trademark and I'm the only one in China that will be able to use this trademark.
Wow, that seems like a really risky decision to make. But again, our perspective is one of expert and educated perspective. I can understand a brand owner, like you said, it's just easier at the time.
And I think talking about this, it's like not even, sometimes it's also like you let your cousin, for instance, register the trademark under his name because he's a EU citizen. So if you are based in the US, Dave, you open your brand in the US and you decide you want to register the trademark in Europe, and in Europe you cannot register a trademark if you are not have an EU presence. But you say, okay, I have a cousin that he is living in Berlin, and he will do it under his name. So everything is fine at the beginning. Whenever you want to sell your business, I can tell you, if you want to sell your business 2 million to me, and then you say, yeah, my cousin is fine. And when you ask your Berlin cousin, then he will ask probably a fair amount of the share, and he on paper owns the a fair amount of the business. So this is something you also should carefully discuss at the beginning, because sometimes it's only a few €100 more to ask an attorney based in Europe to do it for you instead of having someone else that you know and you trust at some point.
IP is just so critical now. I mean, especially on Amazon, where, and I think very intelligently, Amazon has made IP rights an important centerpiece. For instance, if you're not a brand registry member, there are many other systems on Amazon with which you cannot use. Right. So Amazon clearly recognizes that the initial building block here is brand and IP ownership. And I actually love the way that they've rolled out, like, this network of attorneys that brand owners can look to, rapid trademark filings and things like that, and all these different. I think that's awesome because it really is critical that people take these steps as early on as possible, because it will limit, and not only your growth, it could impact the ownership, right, structure of your business as well. So it's a pretty major thing. So SellerX, I mean, what are your thoughts on the aggregator market? I know SellerX, I think, has like about 40 plus brands now, I think,
yeah.
and something like 25,000 products for sale.
Quite a few, right?
Just a few. Yeah, just a couple. What are your thoughts? I mean, is the space changing? We've heard a lot about, changes in the space. I'm just curious how you feel about it.
It is a very exciting space. There is a lot of change all the time, and it's a very dynamic space. So we are talking to so many different type of businesses, and this is what I love the most, because we speak to super small, tiny businesses and to some of them that are already doing like a few dozens of millions of turnover. And I think all of these people, like they truly care about their own businesses, and sometimes they realize that they have reached a ceiling. They can't grow much more. They realize that they just want to exit and enjoy a very early retired time under the sunlights. And so this is something.
Don't we all?
So this is, and I really like to speak to all of these very different type of people, and it makes it there is no two files that are similar, basically. So we always learn so much.
I think, clearly there's been, a lot in the news about maybe some aggregators, overextending a little bit, right, during COVID or during different, in previous years, and now going through sort of this realignment. And I personally think that's a healthy thing for the space, right? Because I think companies that do it right and have the right approach to their business are probably going to be more successful and continue to move forward. Do you think SellerX is going to make a lot more acquisitions? Do you think it will accelerate, or do you think that this, slightly slower, a little bit more patient approach is here to stay?
Right. So we've seen basically 2021 being an absolutely crazy year, and everybody was entering into this aggregator space. I think there is over 100 startups that have appeared suddenly, and as you mentioned, there is like a diversity of these startups in success. At SellerX, we are lucky enough to be one of the I believe one of the most successful. We have like amazing co-founders that are coming from absolutely great background. We are backed by some top tier VC worldwide, like Ecommerce or Sofina, for instance, which are like consumer goods, and we have raised also a few millions to help us grow. So we are one of the few aggregators that have been achieving the unicorn status, like over $1 billion in valuation. So we have a strong backbone, I would say, and I don't know all of these aggregators, but as you mentioned, there is like some of them are struggling a little bit more in the present time. And in 2022, and we are hearing like the tech space is facing more difficulties. This is not the aggregator particularly, but when we see Facebook had a massive layoff. Twitter, obviously. I think Amazon is also facing some difficulties. So this is probably the space is the economy in general is indeed facing difficulties. But I do believe that at SellerX we are one of the most strong aggregator, and we are ready to continue. And this is definitely still our wish to acquire many brands. And I'm doing due diligence all the time. So we are still speaking to many of them, and we are going on this acquisition definitely.
You already know your success relies on your Amazon sales growth, and that means beating counterfeiters and illicit sellers to the buy box. But do you have all the tools you need to do so effectively? IP Secure offers seller intelligence to understand and root out unauthorized sellers and push them out of the buy box through simple enforcement actions that actually work, meaning customers will only see your legitimate products and shop from your authorized sellers. Learn how at ipsecure.com.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, like I said, I think when times are tough, it helps to separate, the companies that I think are very diligent in their approach, and have a strategy, right, that's repeatable and scalable, and also have the operational expertise, because that was one of the things that really seemed to reveal itself, which is, I don't know that some of the other aggregators are better at running those e-commerce businesses than the owners were. So if you're not better at it, you're not going to probably be that successful, because you're just bringing them all together. And that's important. That's kind of the first step. But to me, the second step is you have to have operational excellence and know, right, how to grow margins. And most importantly, on Amazon, how to own the buy box and how to keep your channel clean. And that starts with brand and with IP, right? It's really interesting to me. I always felt like brand protection is really much more of a business discussion than, a pure risk mitigation discussion. And that's, I think, part of the difference between sort of the luxury space and the e-commerce space. In luxury, I feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it's viewed very much as pure risk mitigation, and that's fine. That's important. There's no taking away from that, especially if you're an iconic luxury brand. But it really is a business growth driver, on the e-commerce side as well.
Yeah, it is very important, and especially because I think for in the e-commerce side, and when you do not own the buy box, when to refer to the title of your podcast, if you don't own the buy box, basically you make zero sales. So it's absolutely critical. Basically, it kills your business in a few days if you don't if you are not able to own your buy box.
I think one of the things that's hard too on Amazon is there's all these generic brands. And some people say brand on Amazon is irrelevant.
I hear the point in a sense that most of the people, they don't go when you want to buy a luxury brand or you want to buy a football jersey, you usually choose a name. You want your football team to be on the...
Yeah. You're picking the player
exactly.
And the jersey. You're not thinking about the merchant.
Exactly. When you go on Amazon, usually for a vast majority of the product, you are looking for mirror, you are looking for any kind of product that you want for your house or for whatever. And most of the time, you don't really know the brands that you want. You are looking for the one that looks the best. You're looking at the reviews. You're looking at the picture itself of the product. But you are less. You don't necessarily know which brand you want to acquire, which is a bit different from like the very established brand. When you go at Adidas, you want your Adidas jump pant.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's interesting. Amazon has become so good at removing all of the friction, right, between the consumer and that buying decision, that they've almost made the seller invisible. And that's a big part of their strategy, because they want that buying experience, right, to be exactly the same. And not only the same, but fast, easy, enjoyable. And so in the process of doing that, they've created an ecosystem where consumers can be fooled.
Exactly.
And that's a problem for us, right, as brand owners. So it's interesting.
I think what is very interesting in what you said, like you can still buy a brand even though you know the brand, because sometimes we have like some well-known brands as well in our portfolio. You're looking for the brand, so on Amazon, I'm sure you know that the buy brand will be like you acquire from this specific brand, but as you said, you don't necessarily know which is the seller of this brand. And then this is what we call, as I'm sure all of your listeners know, the buy box. And if I'm selling on the my brand, but someone is selling, for instance, cheaper than me, he will take my buy box. And even though he's not selling the same product, he claims that he sells under his own brand. And then, as you said, it can be a generic brand, it can be a pure counterfeit of my brand, it can be parallel sales of my own brand. But then in any case, the end is the same, that I'm not having the buy box and I make 0 sales, and the customer do not see any difference. So this is why it's a bit of a trick. Amazon doesn't really see. They make the sale anyway. The customer just have the product. But on our side, it's absolutely critical.
Yeah. Amazon always makes money, no matter what happens. That's for sure. That's a guarantee. But yeah, it's a good point. And a lot of people don't think about how unique Amazon is in that regard. Walmart in the US has a similar structure where, you have one listing for a product and you have many sellers, right? Supposedly offering you the same product, different prices, different consumer experiences. But Walmart and Amazon are unique in that sense, right? eBay, Alibaba, most of the platforms throughout Europe that I'm familiar with, even in Asia, like Taobao, they all have this notion of a unique listing and a unique seller.
I think it is moving. I believe I've seen it at eBay now, starting to be also the ASIN-like type of structure, where you have one product only. They want to have like one clean listing, and then a lot of sellers can plug themselves into this one listing if they sell this particular product. But as you mentioned, this is like I believe this is Amazon that invented it, and they still very Amazon centric.
Again, it's another challenge for you and I, because, it's like, well, who uploaded the copyrighted material? Who committed the infringement? They all couldn't have committed it. Somebody was there first. Somebody uploaded it. And then on top of that, you may unknowingly be licensing that content to Amazon, but Amazon didn't put it up either. It's really confusing. It's enough to kind of drive you mad.
And this is why it's absolutely critical to have the brand registry for your own brands in all of the markets of Amazon, if you are an Amazon seller, because the one that owns the brand registry will be able to claim the listing and sold under his brand, and then to change and modify for everyone. And the rest of the people that do not own this brand registry won't be able to change once you have it. So, but this is why, again, if you do not own the brand registry in Germany and you are a US seller, then the German seller will be able to control the listing. So this is something very important for you to have the broad protection.
Again, geography matters, right? Not all the same rules apply in all the same places. So you really do need to think about each one of these markets individually. And what do I need to get the IP? What do I need to do to defend the IP in that space? Could be different, right, than what you're doing in some other jurisdiction. I know some luxury brands who are not brand registry members, specifically because they do not want to give certain IP rights to Amazon. For instance, the most famous watch brand in the world is not a brand registry member and refuses to join, because doing so would mean that all the images for their watches that are currently on the platform are now, again, if they've come from the manufacturer's website, for instance, they're sort of licensed now to Amazon. And that creates some fear for them. But I also agree with you, and I think, well, yeah, but you're not benefiting now from the brand registry tools and the visibility that it gives you. So I think for some, it's kind of a a difficult conflict there to reconcile.
I think for the smaller sellers and the vast majority of the sellers on Amazon, you don't really have the choice today. This is another discussion on how what can or cannot be done. But I think if you want to be successful on Amazon, you need to be brand registered, and you have to play with Amazon rules, which are indeed different from the rule of the rest of the world. But if you want to sell on Amazon, Amazon has the right to use their own conditions, and being part of brand, you are allowed indeed to not sign to brand registry. But if you want to benefit from all of the content, from the marketing, from the help of everything that Amazon can offer to you, then it's much easier to have brand registry. And if you want to fight for your buy box, it's much easier to be brand registered than if you used all of the tool outside of brand registry, which exist. They still exist, but then they are not as efficient as brand registry.
So that's fair, I think. Your point is fair, which is, if you don't want to join because you don't want to give up those IP rights to Amazon, there are tools for you, right? There's still a public complaint form you can use. There's other avenues you can go down. But it sounds like, in your opinion, any of the negatives that you may think are there are outweighed a lot by the positives you get from joining brand registry and from engaging those tools. Do you find that you're coaching brands a lot on like how to take advantage of the Amazon tools, or do you guys just basically, once you acquire the brand, you then take over the administration and protection of it, and you allow them to kind of just move to the side?
So usually the way we work, it depends on different deals. Some of the sellers decide to stay with us because they like their business and they want to still work with us and help us running the brand. And in this case, we will work hand in hand. But I won't lie, the very vast majority of the people, they take their money and they enjoy their life, and they go to Disneyland, Disneyland or wherever, Mosquito Island or anything. And then it's and in such cases they give us the key of the business basically, and then we will try to do as best as we can to protect it. For instance, also myself, I will take the keys of the brand registry and try to expand it as much and to cover as much as possible to have the most successful brand.
That's interesting. I like that model because I think it gives you the control you need to protect your investment. I work with a bunch of, they're not aggregators now. They're like hybrids where sometimes they buy the brand, sometimes they just sort of take over the brand's 3P seller accounts and become the management provider. And then sometimes they're doing both. And it gets quite complex and confusing. And I would think if you're setting yourselves up to be, the frontline seller for a brand on Amazon, but you don't have the tools and the capability to control the IP, I would think it's going to be really, really challenging for you.
No. Of course, if we are running the brand directly, we need to control directly everything. So in such a case, we take we assign all of the IP to the companies like that SellerX in this case will control, and then we will take control as well of the brand registry and take care directly of the brand protection of the brand. But this is obviously critical, and these kind of hybrid solution exist indeed, but then it's also in my opinion it can be a little bit hard to run, and you need a lot of communication and sometimes different people would do it differently. So this is why on our side, most of the time we would not go into these hybrid solutions.
I mean, you're at 40 plus brands and 25,000 products. I would think you don't have, it would require a lot of resources.
So we have obviously a fair amount of work, but we have an amazing team.
Yeah, I'm sure. And again, I think you're being probably attacked fairly proactively, because I know, at least from my experience in the space, there's different types of infringers, right? There are sort of the unknowing consumer who is engaged in infringement and doesn't really know it and didn't mean it. But then there's, a core group of offenders that know that they're either consciously selling a counterfeit product or, a gray market product and using your IP in the process. And I would think if I was a bad guy and I saw a press release about SellerX acquiring a new brand, I might try to take advantage of that, right? I might try to flood some of these platforms with my own product listings until I get caught, right?
But don't worry, you would be caught quite fast because we have a great team of lawyers and we won't let this happen.
Well, that's the whole point. I mean, that's why I think, I think having someone like you is critical. And again, I mean, I'm on a mission to educate Amazon sellers, not lawyers, honestly, because they already know, right? The IP community understands these problems very well. Maybe not gray market so much, but they certainly understand counterfeiting and IP infringement very well. So we don't have to educate IP attorneys. We have to educate business owners and brand owners and e-commerce managers that their goals are going to be inhibited and really destroyed if they don't partner with someone like yourself and lay the appropriate groundwork for it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and this is also something I believe we are great at SellerX. When we look at maybe other aggregators, we have like a strong in-house team, in-house counsel team. So we are very serious about what is legal. We are looking at everything that is best for the brand we acquire, and we are strongly proactive in this regard.
Do you tend to stick to certain sectors, or is it more about the financials and the profile of the brand? Meaning, like I feel like some aggregators seem to focus on certain sectors, whether that's toys and games or other types of consumable products. Is there a sort of an industry component to the focus, or is it really more about we have a rigid process and it doesn't really matter what the product is, it matters if they fit the process?
I think it is, we are interested in a wide variety of product and definitely not your first example on very specific type of product. Mostly we focus on what we call evergreen product, the product that are keeping on sale and less of the with less seasonality, but we are interested in any type of businesses, and I've done due diligence on extremely different type of product, and we have acquired as well in our portfolio like all kind of product basically.
That's awesome. That's probably got to be really fun.
It is, and this is something that I was looking for joining these. Like, it's not that frequent to as an IP specialist to be focusing on so many type of product and yeah. So this is something very exciting for me.
Because you basically joined, a company that is really an M&A financial services company first, and your business is e-commerce, but everything has to be looked at through that lens. I hear you. I think that's really cool that you get to work on all those different kinds of brands and deal with different stories, probably some good, probably not so good. And a lot of what you do, it sounds like, is pre-acquisition. What about post-acquisition? What tends to happen there, just generally?
Yeah. So I think there is maybe 50% of the job is pre-acquisition, as you said. So we prepare everything to have during the M&A process to have the best deals and to have the best brands and help them be ready to grow. And but the post acquisition is also very important, and we have like hundreds of people in the building that are working to help this brand grow. So we have like teams of brand managers, we have marketing teams, we have a supply chain team that are helping the business to run, because as you said, so we we are an M&A business at the beginning, but once we have the brand, we do not let the brand just run by themselves. Like we are actually very actively working on this brand. We have a long-term vision to build this brand. We want we say a world-class portfolio of durable consumer products. So this is something that we are very much working on to make it better. For instance, we have like an amazing ESG team. So working on sustainability, we are trying to make our product as green as possible and to work in that direction. So this is something that is also extremely important for us. And this is all post acquisition.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would think it's a lot of well, maybe you're probably looking in before you make the purchase at, their portfolio, the gaps that may exist in that portfolio. Just out of curiosity, because I would think international growth is really important, right? I own a brand, let's say that's in the US, and we're doing, $5 million a year in gross sales on Amazon. And, you decide that, I'm an attractive target to acquire. I would think getting me international is really a big part of the long-term growth strategy. So knowing that, and let's assume my trademark's pretty clean, would you go out and get IP rights everywhere? Or would you just do the next market and then do the next market? Just out of curiosity, because I know it's expensive to trademark, around the world. I mean, just doing a trademark search is expensive. So
Yeah. No, I would say go step by step. Once you have a nice business in the US, maybe you could, like the main market, especially for Amazon, which are Europe, UK, maybe Japan, maybe Australia. I think China is always a must because most of the products are made in China, and you will help yourself in the future if you have the Chinese trademarks.
Too much risk there. There's too much risk in China to not focus on it early.
Sometimes I see when people are doing WIPO, the WIPO expansion of the trademark is like a system for your listeners that don't know, like a very easy system to expand your brand globally. In a WIPO, you can actually tick North Korea. And I've seen some people ticking North Korea. This one maybe is not the first priority
right.
for
but not a big consumer market right now.
All of the as you said, like the big consumer market, like everywhere that Amazon is selling can be interesting. So the main market, and then it also depends on your type of brand. If you have a brand that is specifically targeting some type of people, then you might want to target more in this area.
I always wonder about that, right? Because it's a financial investment for you, especially post acquisition. So it's sort of like, do we go all in because we think this product's going to be a global, success? Or do we, maybe take a slower approach with the risk that somebody else could get to one of those markets before us, right? And as you grow, you become more visible, you're more of a target. So it's a little bit of a risk there.
It is a little bit of a risk, and I get the point. Like I understand it completely. I think it is you can start thinking about it, especially when sellers start exploring the option of exiting and selling their business to whoever, whether it is an aggregator or whoever. It might be at this stage a good idea to start backing their trademarks in the most relevant markets. It is actually quite fast to register a trademark. Like within 6 months in most of the market, you have a trademark. In the US is a little bit longer, but in Europe, like it takes 4 to 6 months. In the UK is even shorter. So you could actually prove to the potential acquirer that you already own the trademark in Europe and UK, even though you are not doing business, and then it will make the due diligence much faster. And then the potential acquirer, and in this case SellerX, if you are selling me your US only business, but you already have the trademark ready to expansion, for me it's much easier, and I will still have a look at your portfolio, but then still it will be much easier. So this is something I would definitely recommend to anyone that is maybe considering exiting and selling their business to cover the main market. It will cost them like few thousand, but then it will help them a lot.
That's interesting. So if you had two brands, right, equal size, equal margins, all that, but one of them went out and spent 10 or 20,000 euros to secure their mark in, let's say, half a dozen key markets, and the other one didn't. The one that has, the first brand, I would think, is going to get the meeting, is going to get the focus.
It will be, for us, is much less of a risk. So this is for sure, it will help a lot the discussions.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And that's super helpful for our listeners, because I think a lot of brand owners that are considering and thinking about, an exit, they need to know this, that it's, especially now where aggregators like SellerX are probably being a little bit more choosy, right? In terms of who they acquire, you want to give yourself the best possible chance. And so while IP in and of itself isn't going to automatically create revenue for you, it will take your, lack of it could really crush your dreams and your growth.
Like, I would recommend the sellers as well to carefully choose the brand they want to use at first, because we often see, and too often unfortunately see, some brand that might be super nice, but for on a trademark perspective are not super nice. As you're certainly aware, like if you use something that is too descriptive, you cannot register it as a trademark, and it can be like the case, like for instance in the US, if you use a German word to register something, if you then it might be a possibility in the US, because most of the US citizens do not speak German. But whenever you want to expand into Europe, the office might tell you this is actually super descriptive in German, so you cannot register. So then it means you cannot have brand registry, and you cannot benefit from all of the benefit Amazon offers you. So this is something you might want to consider also at the beginning, and I always strongly advise like to consult an attorney, an IP specialist. I know it is a bit of money at first, but then again, if you have a good trademark from scratch, it will help you a lot, because also we see sometimes a really cool name that don't have any descriptive issue, but then you have a competitor that will say knock 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 is actually very similar to my own name, and please go away. So it will be a pity if you have printed all of your packaging, if you have ordered all of the product, and then you have 10,000 of your product that have to be destroyed. This is something that will be very, very costly for you.
It's always more money to change later than it is to try to, kind of get it right from the beginning. Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. So if I was a brand owner and I wanted to get the attention of SellerX, what's the best way to do that? Just generally. I mean, and certainly I don't think emailing Oliver is the answer to that question. But how do people kind of get the attention of a company like a SellerX?
I think indeed, myself, I'm not the first door of entry, but on the website, there is a form, so you can, on sellerx.com, you can connect, and you have the possibility to explain in a very short few sentences. You can explain what is your business and key elements, and then you will be called back in a matter of days by our team. That we have a team of specialists that looking into these business development. And then it's like catching our attention is not too hard. So you just write an email on the website, or you contact some people on LinkedIn. If you have like business development on LinkedIn, they will be able. But I think the website is probably the easiest.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? It's actually not hard, because SellerX is looking for you. So the door's open, right? Come on in, visit the website. I noticed that you're pretty active too. Like, I think you attended an event this week, right? I think I saw that on LinkedIn. And that was a European based
European IP summit, indeed. So we were, I don't know, maybe 150 IP specialists from all over the world. There was a bunch of people flying all over from the US or Japan to attend, and we discussed the best practices in all type of businesses. So I was the only representative from the e-commerce, the aggregator industry, a lot of e-commerce, but then we discuss, and these kind of events are always nice. And actually, I'm thinking about these kind of events. This is very IP centric, so I'm not expecting any of your sellers to attend this kind of very, very specific IP lawyer summit, but there is a lot of fairs and to which SellerX are attending in the US, in Europe, in China, where they can meet like real people. Now that COVID is almost over, we actually can meet real people, and there is a lot of e-commerce fair that SellerX is attending.
I think you in particular and SellerX are doing a fabulous job getting out into the market, educating brands, and sort of leading, right? Leading from the front. And so I'm not a brand owner. I don't sell anything on Amazon, but if I did, I would want to partner and to sell to a company that was going to continue to love my brand the way that I've loved it, and you made that point earlier, which is, especially for the small and medium-sized brands, it's very emotional for these people. They've probably spent years developing it, and a lot of sweat and tears and crying in their garage. And eventually they get to this point, right, where they're able to move on. And I'm a business owner. And if I were to sell my business, it would be really important to me that I sold it to a company that was going to love it and take care of it, as much as I have.
Yeah, this is something we take very much into consideration, and we are trying as much as we can to do the best job here.
Well, Oliver, clearly, you're an expert. I want to say thanks for joining the show, sharing your expertise. As I said, I think SellerX is lucky to have you and your team. It's going to make them more successful in the future. If people wanted to reach out, again, I know you're not on the business development side, but from a legal perspective, from an industry perspective, what's the best way for people to reach you? Is it LinkedIn, or is there another way?
Yeah, on LinkedIn is fine. I think I can answer certain questions. To be completely transparent, I will not answer. And I think the need if it's like very specific legal questions, I encourage people to actually reach out to an attorney in their jurisdiction or the jurisdiction they are aware, because on these one I will not answer. But a lot of questions I'll be happy to answer.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Oliver. We really appreciate your time. I think the space is continuing to evolve. I'm a big believer in the aggregator model, but I think you have to be prepared, and you have to be very diligent, and you have to know what you're doing. And that's the big difference, clearly, with you and with SellerX is a lot of expertise and a lot of careful thought, has gone into all of this. So thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
You've been listening to Owning the Buy Box, a show from IP Secure. Never miss an episode by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast player. Please give us a rating, leave a comment, and share episodes that you love. That helps us keep delivering you the tools you need to sharpen your competitive edge and ensure your authorized sellers always own the buy box. We'll see you next time.